and I'm here. I wanted to welcome all of you on behalf of the staff here at Winter's Wellness. I've worked here about 3 months, and in that 3 months I've really got to witness a lot of really incredible changes with some of our patients here. In fact, I really want to stress too how our patients actually become more like family and friends. And I've never really seen that in a medical office before. But here, we do establish those relationships. Our patients become very special to us. We pray for our patients twice a day, once in the morning and once in the afternoon. I think that just really goes to show what kind of establishment that we do have here and how much Dr. Winters really cares for his, not just his staff, but also his patients. A little about Dr. Winters is he has been in practice for over 30 years here in Paducah. And we actually still on occasion, or actually pretty regularly, see some of those early patients that come in and visit with us. And I think that they stay just as long to hang out with us and laugh with us and reminisce as much as they do to come in and be seen as well. I would like to say also that Dr. Winters, he graduated over 30 years ago, 1983, he attended the Palmer College of Chiropractic, and he's got over 3,000 hours of continued education, which is 10 times more than what's required. He takes this very seriously. He likes to go home and study all the cases. This is his life's work, and he's very passionate about it. He and Debbie, y'all got to meet Debbie. She and he have been married for over 14 years. They have 7 kids and almost 16 grandkids. 14 at this time and 2 that will be here, in the near future. So I would like to also, we're going to start our presentation. It lasts approximately an hour. We'll start at 6:30. We'll be over approximately 7:30. And at that time, Dr. Winters will be here to answer any questions, and Karen and I can help if you would like to set up an appointment or if there's anything that we can assist you with. And we just ask, for cell phones to be turned off. We are videotaping and also not to cause a distraction. So Dr. Winters, if you would like to come up here.
Okay. Tammy's anxious to go because I was motioning her for a little meeting back there and she's taking off starting, but that's okay. So really energy is a big thing. If we don't have enough of it, we suffer for it. And we don't, it affects our relationships, it affects our work, it affects our family if we don't have enough energy. So let's talk about increasing energy, okay? So energy is really a mind-body connection thing when you think about it, because we don't really have a gauge on us that, like a blood pressure gauge that we can pump up and it says 150 over 70. We don't have a measurement like that for our energy, do we? So it is a mind-body connection thing, and I want to show you how all that interacts tonight. So there's actually a central processing unit for our energy in our brain, right between my fingers here. And it's really the seat of the mind-body connection. So you hear about the mind-body connection, but it's not just something for people that do yoga or health nuts. It's a real thing that affects every one of us every day. Even the toughest construction worker out there has a mind-body connection. He's just maybe not as aware of it as other people. But it's a real thing. So there's literally, just like a computer has a central processing unit, there's a central processing unit in our brain. And it's called the hypothalamus. And this hypothalamus receives input from our hormones and our biochemistry, from our immune system, from our spine, and from our emotions. And it integrates all that, and that's really where energy gets integrated, is right there in the brain. And so we don't think about that. But I want to break this apart and show you how these different factors affect your energy. So the first thing we're going to talk about is our immune system. Anybody ever had the flu? At least one time? Yeah. How'd you feel when you had the flu? You felt pretty rough, didn't you? You felt pretty dead, or it felt like dying, and you didn't have any energy, did you? And so when we have the flu, we have a massive release of these immune messengers called cytokines. And those cytokines, they actually go up here and influence that hypothalamus and slow it down so that your body can heal. So your body is actually acting intelligently at that time. It's slowing itself down so that you have a chance to heal. But where that really happens is in the brain here. So we just talked about that. Now think about if you had that flu-like feeling 24 hours a day, you'd have some crappy energy, wouldn't you? And so for some people, one of their energy problems is that 24 hours a day slow feeling because their immune system is affecting their hypothalamus and draining their energy. Now, so if we have hidden infections, these hidden infections, this burden of hidden infection is going to drive our energy off worse than anything ever could. As one of my friends says, the burden of hidden infection will outperform the IRS auditing you any day. And the reason is because it'll create those massive cytokines, those massive immune messengers all the time, and that will just devastate our central processing unit for energy. And so we can have hidden infections. We can have hidden infections in our gut, hidden infections in our teeth, and they're going to slowly create all these cytokines, these immune messengers, and they're going to go up to that hypothalamus area in the brain, and they're going to slow it down. And they're going to cause us a lot of fatigue. So for a lot of people, these hidden infections either are in our gut, and when I test people with their gut, everybody has parasites or infections in their gut. I'm telling you, we do a great stool test, and we see them all the time. Like this person we tested had blastocystis hominis. It's a microscopic parasite. There's no way they would know that without a test, but it's something that can drain your energy. They also had Helicobacter pylori, which is a bacterial infection in their stomach, and lots of people have that. Some say up to 50% of the world's population has that. Not everybody it's a problem for, but for the people it is a problem for, it can really drain their energy. And so these are kinds of things that we're talking about, hidden stuff that you're just walking around you wouldn't see, and you can't see that on somebody, but it's there, and those infections just sap our energy. Now, we talked about that kind of feeling that you have when you have the flu and you get the massive release of those immune messengers, those cytokines. Another way to create lots of cytokines in our body and an ongoing low-grade, dull flu-like feeling. So if the flu is just, you want to feel like you're dead, well maybe this is not feeling like you're dead, but you just don't feel like yourself, or you don't feel enough energy to really want to enjoy things. And that's if we have food reactions or infections in our gut. What some people call leaky gut. Now that sounds like a goofy term, but intestinal hyperpermeability, I guess would be the more scientific term. But the leaky gut means that the one cell lining in our gut has opened up so that things are getting into the immune system before they should. So it's just like y'all have these 5 chairs here. We spread the chairs apart and I walked right through and I got to those people back there. I'm not supposed to, if I'm the immune system, I'm not supposed to be able to reach Jamie back there. You're supposed to keep me out. But, or if I'm a infection or an antigen, what we call an antigen, if I'm a bad guy, y'all's row of chairs is supposed to keep me out. But if your all chairs get spread out, then I can go right in there and attack whoever back there, and then the immune system has to deal with me. And that's what's happening when we're sensitive to foods and don't realize it. So there's 3 big foods, or 4 big foods. That's wheat, gluten, soy, dairy, and for some people corn are some of the most sensitive foods that we're likely to react to. There can be others, but if we have those hidden food sensitivities, it can create immune reactions in the gut. So we get these food intolerances, and those food intolerances create all these immune messengers, and that's going to in turn affect the brain as well. It affects the brain in multiple ways. One way is that hypothalamus area, which I showed you, is going to input into there. And there's also direct communication between the gut and the brain through what's called the vagus nerve. It's the nerve that controls the gut. It comes down from the brain, but it's a 2-way street. And the neuro research shows that the bacteria in our gut, through that vagus nerve, directly affect our brain. There's so much work coming out now. A new study showed that myelinization, the coating of the nerves around our brain that happens as we're a child growing up, is dependent on healthy gut bacteria. That's from the University of Cork in Ireland. They showed that the neurotransmitters GABA, which relaxes the brain, is directly influenced by bacteria in our gut. Through that vagus nerve, it communicates backwards, and also through the bloodstream as well. So our gut is such an important thing, and it may be one of the reasons that we don't have the energy that we should have, because we may have hidden infections in our gut, or we may be reacting to foods. And so that's that immune component of the mind-body connection that I was talking with you about. Now, fatigue can be a common thing with mold, for example, or biotoxins like Lyme disease, meaning you got a tick bite that got into your system. The conventional model of testing is very inadequate for it. It probably misses well over 50% of Lyme cases, I'm sure. And so there's other ways that can be tested for. My discussion is not to discuss Lyme tonight, but just briefly mention it. And then mold is another thing that lots of people have big fatigue issues with. And we've got several testimonial videos on our website and our YouTube channel of people who have major issues with both fibromyalgia and chronic fatigue, and those were their two diagnoses. And once we figured out that the mold was really their problem and helped their body detoxify that mold, they got like total reversal. One lady hadn't worked in over 10 years and had the diagnosis of chronic fatigue, and when we detoxified her from mold, within 30 days she had way more energy, and after a couple of months she went back to work part-time, and recently during the quilt show she worked 70 hours that week. Now that's a change in energy because we figured out that her problem was mold and detoxified it for her, or helped her with that. So as we mentioned, clear back, and I'm, for the benefit of our guest here, I'm going to just came in, this is our slide here in the beginning where we're showing the mind-body connection to our energy and how this all happens in the brain, right in the area called the hypothalamus. So now we're going to dial in on this section a little bit, biochemistry and hormones. So could thyroid be my problem? And so your thyroid allows burning of energy in the body, and it's a huge factor in our energy, and it's a huge reason that many people have fatigue. Unfortunately, the conventional medical model just addresses whether you need thyroid replacement or not. They do a good job of that, but that's such a limited aspect of thyroid functioning. And so they don't really address what can't be solved by drugs. So the rest, you either need thyroid replacement and they get the dose right, and they usually do, or you don't, and that's it. But so there's lots of people with weight gain, sleep problems, hot flashes, cold sensitivity, thinning of the hair, brain fog, dry skin, infertility, constipation, all these kinds of things going on. And it is a thyroid problem, but it's not really being addressed adequately. And so these are some of the things that can go on with the thyroid that are outside that conventional medical model. So we can have altered signals to the thyroid. So that means that this hypothalamus signals the pituitary, and then the pituitary signals the thyroid with something called thyroid stimulating hormone. Well, if the thyroid is underactive, it doesn't give enough signal, if the pituitary is underactive, it doesn't give enough signal to the thyroid to turn on right and burn energy properly. And so for those cases, we'll actually see a low TSH, lower than it should be, based on the thyroxine or the T4 numbers. And so, so the signal doesn't get to the thyroid. Sometimes there's an immune attack on the thyroid, and this is really common. We have a video series called Fatigue Factors, and the first thing I addressed in there is Hashimoto's thyroid, or autoimmune thyroid, where the immune system is beaten up on the thyroid. And again, half the time that's not even tested for, because they're going to give you Synthroid no matter what. So there's nothing to do about it in the conventional model. There's a lot to do about it in a functional model like we use. And so the immune system may be beating up on the thyroid and causing it to not function right. We may have sex hormone interference, meaning particularly estrogens, and we see this a lot in ladies on the birth control pill. The estrogen may be taking up binding sites and not allowing thyroid hormone to bind properly. So it might look right on other aspects of the lab, but we'll see something called T3 uptake off, and we'll know that other hormones are interfering with the thyroid. We can have the adrenals breaking the thyroid. And by this I mean that the adrenals are also responsible for helping with energy. They make something called cortisol. You hear commercials about cortisol relating to energy, but also belly fat and things like that. So if the adrenals are running really slow, so to speak, fatigue, and the thyroid is running faster, the body can't handle that discrepancy, and so it's going to have to slow down the thyroid to match the adrenals. And so we see that a lot, and I'll show you a case of that here in just a second. And then poor liver or gut function, decreasing thyroid hormone conversion, meaning that your body makes mostly T4, and if they have to replace hormone, that's usually what they give you is T4. But your body really, what it metabolically active at a cellular level is T3. The body takes an iodine off of that to make something called T3, and that's what does all the work and creates your energy. That process of going from T4 to T3 happens in the liver. 60% of that conversion happens in the liver, and 20% of it happens in the gut. So if we have liver problems or we have gut problems, it's going to slow that conversion, and we're going to have energy problems. So on the labs, we'll look at a test called free T3, and it should be at least a 3 for people to feel good. And so a lot of people are 2.6 or 2.5 or something, and they're not going to have good energy because they're not converting their hormone properly. Now I'm afraid, even though I'm videoing, that I'm going to trip on this shoestring here, and that would be even worse, wouldn't it? So these are 6 things that we look at concerning the thyroid from a functional perspective that aren't even going to be addressed in the medical model. And these all can affect our energy. And then the other question is, do we have something called adrenal fatigue? So we hear about adrenal fatigue, and it's almost a misnomer, but it's certainly an easier term to use. The correct way to talk about it would be hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis dysfunction. That's too big a word for most people, but what it means is that area in the brain, that hypothalamus, is coordinating with the adrenal glands, and if that loop gets off, then we have these symptoms called adrenal fatigue. And so we have difficulty waking up in the morning, so we may go to sleep tired, but we wake up tired. We don't have the energy in the morning like we should have. And that could be one sign of it. Continuing fatigue not relieved by sleep, lethargy, lack of energy, increasing PMS, low sex drive, brain foggy, thoughts feeling fuzzy, and so forth. Those could be signs of adrenal fatigue. Lots of stresses can affect adrenal fatigue. So lifestyle issues, grief, stress, marital issues, financial issues, lifestyle issues, too much sugar, smoking, etc., diet issues, again, allergies, prescription medications, so forth. This was a lady, she actually saw us from, she was living in Hopkinsville when she first saw us. And so that was a decent drive over here. But she'd been to doctors in New York, Los Angeles, El Paso, and some other places with her thyroid. And what we really helped her figure out was that her adrenals were a big part of why she wasn't healing up and straightening out. because those adrenals were breaking the thyroid, slowing it down. So we did a saliva test with her. We've got a cool way of testing hormones now, even beyond saliva. And you notice her morning cortisol is supposed to be on the right is what it should be, 13 to 24, and she was way low at 3.8. At noon she was still low, afternoon she was still low, and then the evening, what did it do? It went way up. She's supposed to be unwinding and getting ready for sleep, and so the cortisol is supposed to be lowest point, and this is what we call wired but tired, meaning that you get the second wind in the evening, and it's the only time you really feel good, because you're kind of low throughout the day, and then it's about time to go to bed, and you start getting this energy. Your rhythms are all out of balance, and that was the case for her. So we helped her straighten that out, and she did way better. Got over her pains, over her heart palpitations. Her sex drive came up. She got more energy to exercise, and she actually during that process moved to Belgium, but she came back to the United States a couple times. So she still saw us coming. Each time she'd come back to the U.S., she'd see us for a while, and now she's pretty good to go. And so we've got a video of her testimonial how she saw docs all over the place, and we were able to help her. So sex hormones and fatigue. So testosterone, this is just one example of how sex hormones can affect us. So testosterone, especially in guys when we get to my age, it can lag and it can contribute to fatigue, but also can contribute to fatigue in ladies. And any of these sex hormone imbalances can. And so we have a wonderful way of testing hormones now called the Dutch test, and it's a dried urine test. So there's little strips of paper come and just in a folded over thing, and you either just pee on the strip or you pee in a cup and dip the strip in there, let it dry for 24 hours, and you do that 4 times a day. Like say if I was going to test today, I probably would have done it around 5 or 6 o'clock, and then right before bedtime, and then I'd do it again when I wake up in the morning, and then 2 hours after that. So it'll give me that rhythm of the adrenals, but it'll also tell me how much overall cortisol I'm making, something called metabolized cortisol. And so it'll tell me not only what's available back, but my total production of cortisol. It'll tell me all of the estrogen, progesterone, testosterone, and then it'll show me how all that stuff is breaking down, and that's what's the cool part. And you can't get that from blood labs or saliva labs. You can't see how these estrogens are breaking down. And this estrogen breakdown is important for men as well as for as women too, because men have estrogen, and there's a chance if you're over 50 years old or 55 or older, you may have more estrogen than your wife does, because your wife's estrogen is going down in menopause. And I swear to you, men, you may have more estrogen than your wife does. And so for a lot of guys, too much, it's called an enzyme called aromatase, too much testosterone is converting over to estrogen, and then you may not be breaking it down properly. So this is an amazing test. It's called the Dutch test for hormones. So it'll show the 3 estrogens, and then it'll show the 3 pathways that those are breaking down. One pathway is protective. The other pathway, if it's not added a methyl group on it, a second step in that breakdown can actually contribute to cancer, both for ladies, breast cancer, and for men, prostate cancer. And then the third breakdown is called 16-hydroxyestrogen, and that's the one, if it's too high, then you get all these estrogen dominant symptoms as far as problems with your menstrual cycle and breast tenderness and all those kinds of things. So this estrogen breakdown is just huge for women and for guys. And so we can tell all that with this Dutch test. So it's a really great test. Now let's talk about cellular energy metabolism. So when our muscles make energy, they have to generate that in little areas of the cell called the mitochondria. So it's like a little battery for the cell. And if that mitochondria doesn't have the right nutrients and the right things, or it's got too many toxins stressing it, it won't be able to generate energy. And so the way that we'll know that usually through history, like fatigue after exercise or can't exercise, and we'll see that. But Debbie, come on up here if you don't mind. Yeah, you're going to be on the video. That's all right. You can handle it. So we'll see that history-wise with problems exercising or fatigue after exercise, but also be able to tell it. Like I can take somebody's strong muscle and I'll try to pulse it 10 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Now that's normal, but somebody that has one of these cellular energy metabolisms, I may do it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and it'll just weaken. It won't be able to hold, and I'll know that they have issues with that mitochondrial energy production. And when we turn that around, thank you. That's when we turn that around, that's what will really help people exercise and be able to do those things like they want to. So the people that are just, they're toast when they exercise, that's often an issue for them. And usually what's going on there is lack of one of these vitamins. It could be one of the B vitamins, it could be coenzyme Q10, it could be carnitine or other things, lipoic acid. And one of those things is low, and we'll be able to figure out what it is either through reflex testing that we do, or just history-wise, or through some urine testing called organic acid that shows exactly what vitamins are off. We'll be able to fix that, and people will get their energy back. One of my favorite supplements for that, and I take it all the time, is Cellular Vitality. And it's a naturally occurring source of, it's CoQ10 that's naturally occurring, not synthetically made. And naturally occurring B vitamins, cordyceps, which is a tonic mushroom known to support fatigue, American ginseng, which is an adaptogen, and adaptogens are herbs which help the body respond better to stress. And then it has a multi-fruit seed powder for antioxidant support. So like if we're riding our bicycles a lot, and I know we're going to ride our bikes 20 miles or something, I'm going to always make sure I forgot the other day and I suffered for it. But I want to take that because it just really helps me, and it helps lots of our patients with cellular energy. But that's an example. Now another thing that can drive down cellular energy is heavy metal toxicity. And heavy metal toxicity is not something that you just read about in Detroit where they got lead in the water, but it affects all of us, but most of us are able to detoxify it well enough and haven't had as heavy exposures, and we can handle it, but it's something that our bodies are dealing with every single day. And so this is a lady, she had a lot of issues with energy. And one of those things that heavy metals will do is they'll block receptor sites for minerals, receptor sites for neurotransmitters, and receptor sites for hormones. So on the cell, we have these receptor sites. That's where the hormones dock in, where the neurotransmitters dock in, minerals sit in there. But these metals will sit in there and block those receptor sites, and then action won't be able to take place that's normal for the body. And people will feel depressed because those receptor sites are getting blocked, or they'll feel low energy because those receptor sites are getting blocked. And it just causes massive, what we call oxidative stress, just wear and tear on our cellular machinery, sort of like our cellular machinery is getting rusted. And that's caused by heavy metals. So this lady, we did a test where we give the person something that binds those metals and measures what comes out in the urine. And you can see she was super high in lead. She actually, when she told us her history, it's just a funny thing, but when she was a kid, she grew up on a farm, and she would lay up on the big gas tank that they had in the yard to fuel the tractor. She'd lay up on there and stick her nose down in there and breathe those fumes, and that was back in the day when the gas was leaded. So we can have iron and B12 deficiency anemias, where we're anemic, we don't have enough iron, we don't have enough B12, and so forth. Most people are aware of those, but I just wanted to throw those in there. Now, If you remember my picture of the hypothalamus, we talked about the immune system, we talked about the biochemistry. Now we're actually going to talk about the spine and the nervous system. So why should a person get adjusted that has an energy problem? Well, the hypothalamus, that central processing unit for your immune system and your hormonal systems, is also receiving direct input from your spine. There's a direct spinal cord tract from your spine directly into that hypothalamus. And so if you aren't receiving the right spinal input, that's going to be a negative factor on your hypothalamus. And I'm not going to discuss too greatly tonight, but in our office we use an instrument to adjust, so there's no twisting, there's no popping, and 95% of the people are just adjusted standing like I am now, and I'm right behind them figuring out where I need to work and making all the corrections. And it's so super gentle, so there's no twisting and there's no popping, and so we attract lots of people that don't want their neck twisted and popped or their back. But so we see lots of help that way. We don't think about it, but one of our biggest stresses is gravity. And so if I'm aligned with gravity, my energy is going to be a lot better than if I'm like this. Because if I'm like this, my neck muscles have to work way harder. You can see 2 inches forward makes a 12-pound head feel like it's 32 pounds, and 3 inches makes it feel like it's 42 pounds. Those muscles are going to have to contract way harder, work way more with that head forward out of balance with gravity. And so your posture is going to make a difference on your energy. So the better your posture is and the more aligned it is with gravity, the better your energy is going to be, the less drag is going to be on your system. There's a couple other ways that we test this, and we actually test it even if people aren't working with us for nutritional situations or more complex situations. We still do these tests on. One is called electromyography, and it measures the electricity in the small muscles along your spine. So there's a couple sensors we put on every other vertebra down your spine, and it measures the electricity coming through those muscles. And so when we see a lot of red like that, we know that that's a lot of energy being wasted in those muscles. So the person's carrying way too much muscle tension, and those are small muscles that are under neurological control. You can't just consciously say, I want them to relax, and they'll relax. So they're under neurological control from the brain, and the person is wasting all kinds of energy there in those muscles. Another test we do, and I think it's actually one of our most useful tests, and I've been emphasizing it more and more with people, it's called heart rate variability. And heart rate variability doesn't diagnose a specific disease, but what it says is how much charge does our battery have, and how balanced is our system. And so when heart rate variability is low, and you can see this person, that white dot is where this person is, and the green zone is the ideal zone. So the dot being down and lower means that this person